All right. So here we are back on the school podcast. I'm really excited about this episode. I got my good friend. His name's Zach Sorensen. You know, I'll never forget it. I'll start it out like this, but I'll never forget it the day you called me. Do you remember this?
I do.
So he played baseball at Wichita State and then played in the Angels organization and the Braves organization. And he's currently a sports psychologist, a performance psychologist in the Braves organization, right?
Correct.
Yeah. But I'll never forget it when you called me the day I was at my house and I'd been talking to Gene on the phone about going to Wichita State and you called me and just told me a little bit about it and really was like sold me on it. You know, like I was like, hey, because I was thinking about going to Utah,
right?
You know, or like I signed early with Utah Valley or something, and I was scared to leave home. You know, I didn't, but I'll never forget that day, man. It was good. So
yeah, you know, I got a call from Gene, who was our head coach out at Wichita, and he's just like, "Hey, man, I got this kid out there from where you come from that we think could really help our program. Can you give him a call and get him out here? You know?" And so, yeah, that's how that all started about. Just kind of filled in a little bit about what's going on out at Wichita and said, you know, this is a place where you can grow up.
Right. No, it was the best decision I ever made. And I tell everybody like that even now that I'm an older, you know, I remember, you know, the coaches always tell you like, you take things for you kids take things for granted, you know, but now I'm looking back and I really am so thankful for that experience out at Wichita State. You know, the baseball and just, I'll never forget it. Gene gave this speech. And for those of you guys that are listening, Gene Stevenson is like I think he's the winningest college baseball coach of all time. I mean, very unbelievable man. I learned a ton from this guy. He was intense. And anyway, I really respect him. But 9/11 happened my senior year when I was out there, and he gave this talk, and I really listened, like, because he was an old war veteran, you know, and he gave this talk in front of our dugout about and I remember him saying specifically, he's like, you know, this is a big deal. He says, and I'll tell you why. He says, our country's never going to be the same after this.
Right.
Things are never going to be the same after this. And I remember thinking, like, what does he really mean? And he's right. You know, like, anyway, you know, I'm super thankful. And I know you know, so Zach, you got drafted when you were a junior, right?
Yes. I left after my junior year. Yeah.
So you went like the second round.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember coming in there and everyone was like, everybody just talking about how good of a player you were, obviously. And so I just always looked up to you, you know.
It was an awesome experience being out there. And you know, the growing for me took place there. And I think, you know, and obviously this is something we'll get into as we talk today, but, you know, the growth came from struggle.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so hard. We talk about this all the time on this side, that the struggle is going to build you up.
Yeah.
It's going to make you who you are. And we get so scared of struggle. We get so scared of failure. But what's interesting, when you start studying it and you're looking at it, the best of the best, the elite,
right,
they're chasing that.
Yeah.
They're chasing that outer edge.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, when they get to that struggle, that's when it begins.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm dealing with it with like so at that level, you know, and at the level that you played at in the big leagues, and then just everything you're doing you played at a high level of sports. Would you say it's almost obsessive of how bad, like the top athletes, right? These guys who are at the highest level, you know, these guys you're working with in the big leagues. Would you say that they become like they're obsessed with the process?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's all about the process for them. In fact, you know, one of the videos that I often share with my players, and I'll send it to you so you can use it, is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
And I love this little small piece because, and I'll start out with this. So the opening question to him is, what does losing feel like to you? So let me ask you that. What does losing feel like to you? Give me some words or a word to describe losing.
Yeah, like losing and not playing good. It's funny. I say this to my kid, and I ask my kid after he has a bad game. He says, I say, how do you feel? How did you play? And he says, I don't know, Dad. I did all right.
Right.
But so for me, if
Yeah.
I have a bad game, and this is where I was talking about how I was a head case.
Right.
I think if I could have gotten my mind better in baseball, like stuff that you're probably working with people on,
Yeah.
then I think I could have been, because my mind would get in the way. So like when I wouldn't play well or we would lose, I would be so mad at myself that I'm going right upstairs that elevator to the top and hitting off the tee for hours, you know, and I can't tell if that was healthy.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know, is it or is it not? Both.
Right.
It is, as long as it gets you back on track.
Right.
But, you know, does it just create more anger, frustration, and get in the way of does it make your mind worse? Right. Is what we need to figure out. So it is the process. So going to Kobe, you know, when I think of words that describe losing, I'm like, man, it sucks.
Yeah.
Losing's the worst. It's embarrassing. It's disappointing. All of these words come out. They ask him, what does losing feel like to you? And he says, it's exciting. It's exciting. And I'm like, no, that's the last word to describe losing, right? And then he breaks it down and he goes, he goes, the reason why it's exciting is because weaknesses are exposed, and that's where all the answers are. And I'm like, whoa, this is it.
Wow.
Pay attention, right? And so I'm just dialed in. And so then the gentleman's like, okay, so you get more answers from losing than you do from winning. And he's like, no, it's the same. He goes, there's answers in losing. The answers are in winning. It's the process.
Yeah.
It's the process. And we'll dive into process because I know that you understand it and I've studied it. So, you know, for who's watching, your listeners, we'll talk about process. But then he goes in and he goes, weaknesses are exposed when you struggle, when you lose, and you just have to look at them. And then you look at them and then you can figure out what you did well, what you want to do better, and then how you're going to do it. And that sets up your blueprint for how you're going to attack tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm just like, right on. There it is. So it's the process, right?
Yeah. Like, so you think about, baseball, hardest game. Would you agree? I mean, I know me and you are biased because we were baseball guys, and like I tell everybody that like that. I'm like, it's the hardest game. I don't care what you say, you know, like, because it's such a game of failure, right?
Right.
You know, so my last year playing, I in the Astros organization, they brought in one like and this isn't they changed my swing basically. Like one of the Rovers came in
totally
and talked to me about pulling the ball more, and I was always a leadoff guy, like up the middle. Anyway, I started out the season. It was the beginning of the season. I started the season like 0 for 35.
Right.
You know, and to be honest, I really couldn't get it together the rest of the season. Like I was a mess. And and then I tried to go back to how I was swinging before, and I couldn't, and I'm overthinking, and like literally had the hardest season of my life.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And, but like how, you know, you see it with field goal kickers. So these money field goal kickers, right? And then they miss one time. And then it's like, oh shit.
There we go.
You know? And then they miss again. And then like what happens? Like, what do you do? You know, because that's sports, right? I mean, that's the game you're playing with people.
Absolutely. And so obviously we all agree that it's the mind.
Right.
It's the mind. So I go around and I ask people all the time, what percentage of the game is mental? What percentage of the game? So if I ask you, what percentage of the game of baseball is mental, what would you say?
Probably 90.
Okay. Right. So 90. Then my next question is, how often do you train the mental game? What's your answer?
Right. No.
None.
You're right.
Right. So here you say that it's 90% mental. And you know, that might be a little high, but that's what everybody says, everyone.
Right.
And you're training it none at all. You're not training the mental game at all. Why not? Well, we don't know how.
Right.
How do you train the mental game? And I think that's why I get so excited about what I'm doing. I've become this mental performance coach. And so there you go. In fact, that's why, you know, the book I wrote, it's called The Hard 90.
Yeah.
It's the hard 90, right? In the very back, if you flip it over, what does it say? It's the 90% of the game that we do less than 10% of the time. Okay. So we have got to figure out how to help everybody with the mental game, because, you know, all we know is, and this goes back to your story, when you struggle, what do? You go harder.
Yeah.
You go harder.
More control.
And is harder better? Sometimes. But a lot of times it might not be. Right. So go back to baseball. Is it the toughest game out there, man? There's a lot of sports out there we got to give respect to, but this is a really funny story that popped in my mind. I'm on a bus ride, you know, I've been to the big leagues. I'm back down in the minor leagues, you know, and so we're just grinding, right?
Right.
And I've got another veteran player sitting in front of me on the bus. So we finish our 4-game series. We jump on the bus. We got the 10-hour bus ride that starts at, you know, 11:30 at night, right? And you know, I can sleep anywhere. I'm pretty fortunate,
right?
But some people can't.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm knocked out, you know, one head against the window, and you know, doing the whole thing. It's like 2:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden, the gentleman in front of me, Lou Merlone, who guy I just love, he's banging his head against the window. Boom, boom, and I'm like, Lou, sweet Lou, cut it out, man. You know, let's go. I'm trying to get some sleep. And he turns around and goes, "Who are we trying to kid?" And I'm like, "Whoa, you know what's going on?" And he's like, "Who are we trying to kid playing this game?" And he's like, and he goes, "You know why we keep playing this game? You know why we will play this game until they tell us we can't?" I'm like, "Tell me." He goes, "We can't do anything else." He goes, "I can't even get 3 hits in every 10 at bats. I can't hit 300.
Right.
He goes, "I can't go be a pilot and land 3 out of 10 planes and still have a job." He's like, he goes, "I can't be a surgeon, you know, and be like, hey, let's just get him tomorrow." You know, he's like, "That's why you keep playing this game, because it's the only game out there where you fail as often as you do." And they're like, "Hey, good game, you know, get him tomorrow." And so, you know, is it a tough game? It is. It's tough because it is so mental. It is so hard. So to answer your question, what happens in that scenario? You know, you're a good player. You're a good player. You're a good player. You miss the field goal, or you go 0 for 5, and then all of a sudden it's 0 for 30.
Right.
What happens there? So for me, there's several things, but at the end of the day, what happens is it turns into belief system.
Right.
It turns into your self-image.
Yeah.
And it goes there way faster than it should. It's very similar to, like, you know, throwing the iron up in the weight room. I mean, you can push and push and push for 12 months in the weight room, and you can make gains. Now, those gains aren't huge, but you can make gains. You take a week off, you got to start over.
Yeah.
You know, and it's frustrating, but it's hard. But it's that way here too.
Yeah.
So what do we see happen? The biggest thing that I see happening is self-talk.
Right.
So the main call I get from you guys, from parents, from coaches is, can you help my son or my daughter with their confidence?
Yeah.
So there's the word, right?
Right.
And I think that might be where this conversation is going to go, is how do we create confidence in our kids and in ourselves?
Right.
Okay. So, and there's a couple ways to attack this, but you know, one way to look at it is this: what you say to yourself about yourself is huge. Huge. Okay. So 40 to 50 thoughts run through your mind every single minute.
Wow.
This last minute, you had 40 thoughts that ran through your mind. And then I go around. So I'm out speaking to a bunch of coaches, and I'm giving this spiel about self-talk and 40 to 50 thoughts per minute, right? And all this and that. And I'm like, I would love to do a study that could determine what percentage of your thoughts are positive versus negative. So let me ask you, Hawk. Let's talk right now, or let's talk as a player.
Right.
Were you more positive or more negative with your thoughts?
So I always say this, like, so I told you, so, you know, where I'm at now mentally, I know I could be a way better baseball player, because you know, I have found some beautiful thinking about myself. Right.
Awesome.
And about my life. But when I was a player, you know, especially during that last season, and when I was partying and I was, you know, got popping pills, like I was like, no, you know, my thoughts about, you know, I mean, my thoughts about myself is when I, you know, that 035.
Oh yeah.
I was embarrassed. Like, I remember the fans, they all knew that I was 0 for 35.
Sure. Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't an easy thing. I had to, and they don't take you out. You know, like I was thinking, dude, take me out.
Give me a break.
You know how in minor league baseball, they're like, let's just see how this dude keeps reacting to this.
Right.
They're not like, I mean, I saw it all the time with like pitchers. They just leave a pitcher and he'd just be getting.
Got to get through it.
Yeah. Like it was almost, did you think that was kind of how minor league baseball was? It wasn't so much about winning. It was a lot of like, let's see how this dude handles this.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to figure out who you are.
Right.
They're trying to learn about you. And if you have to, you know, get out there and struggle, we want to see how you respond. So yeah, you're not as quick to be pulled out of that game, because we got to see how you can respond, because we want to see how that's going to translate to the major league level.
Right.
For sure. So,
but for me, the thinking, you know, my thinking now, because I've had to work on it, you know, train the mental, you know, with addiction, when I became a drug addict and I came home and because I had failed a drug test. I failed a drug test with the Astros, you know, and then I come home and everyone in, you know, this little Ogden area thinks I'm this cool guy.
Right.
You know, I'm a professional.
You're
pro. You're in the big leagues, you know, like I'm like, dude, I was just, but like, I was scared to let anybody know who I really was.
Sure.
So that really kept me sick for a long time. I was like,
absolutely.
And then when it all happened and I had to just get real and get into recovery, and I got into the church and found Christ and was working recovery. I got honest, and ever since then, for me to stay sober, you know, I had a relapse in 2016, and this is similar to what you're doing. That's why I think you could work with addicts, because it's all the same. But like for me, it's like the mental, that's all it is. I have to work on keeping my spiritual condition high.
Yeah.
And that's and what does that take? Well, that takes like, okay, what's my character like? Like, how am I going to react to this situation when this dude cuts me off in traffic?
Totally.
Am I going to, you know, swearing, or am I going to say, come on in, buddy? Totally. You know, I got to do the latter nowadays, you know, like, so, so that's the same thing, right? That I've had to change the way I think and react to situations. If I carried the same mindset when I was playing baseball, I would react way better.
Yeah. And I want to go back to that. So we'll finish up talking about this self-talk. And then I want to go back to the way you coach.
Right.
And because I think that's important to really put an exclamation point on that, because I like to do it the same way.
Right.
And so we'll dive into that. So let's finish the self-talk real quick. So here we are, self-talk, you know, 40 to 50 thoughts run through your mind every single minute. And after I deliver this message to these coaches out there, I go home and I'm listening to an audio book, and they're like, 40 to 50 thoughts a minute. There's been a study done. So I'm like, bam, there we go. Right. On average, we have 74% negative thoughts.
Wow.
74% negative thoughts run through our mind. And it's funny when I throw that number out, everyone goes, wow. And then everyone nods their head, because they're like, yeah, that's it. So if you think about that, 74% of your thoughts are negative. So here I am talking to my baseball players, my hitters especially, right?
Right.
And I got to get their attention.
Right.
So right after after I hear that, I pull a car off the side of the road. I'm like, hey, Siri, what was the average major league batting average last year in the big leagues? And Siri's like, the average major league batting average last year in the big leagues was 260. So 74% negative thoughts, 260 is the batting average. All right. Is that a coincidence? Yeah, probably. But do you think it plays an important role? Yes or no? And the answer is absolutely. Right. So then I tell my hitters, I'm like, my goal is for you to bring 74% down to 50, so that you only think that you suck half of the time.
Right.
And we laugh at that, but you also know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So if you could bring that down to 50, right? Boom. And then here we go. So the question is how do you do that?
Wow.
And that's where your coaching comes into play. And that's why I love following, you know, what was war and now is SOAR is, okay, we're going to give you things to do. We're not just going to talk about it. Hey, you need to have better thoughts, man.
Yeah. Think better about yourself.
You do. You think better. And so here we go. And we do that all the time when we coach. We're like, you need to be different.
Right.
But you know what our kids need? They need to know how. And I'm not just talking kids, I'm talking men, I'm talking women.
Yeah.
Everybody, I believe, is willing to attack something, but we got to give them a blueprint for them to attack it. So how do you do it? Right. So that's the question. And that's why I love coaching. So I have a master's in sports psychology.
Right.
And I'm very adamant about saying I'm a mental performance coach.
Right.
Because I love the word coach. And I know you do as well. You get excited about it. So people don't just come to me because they're at the bottom.
Right.
So I want to give you things to do so that when you hit a tough spot, you're going to know what to do ahead of time. And that's what you're doing with SOAR. And that's why I love it. And we've been chatting back and forth for years about this, because I'm excited about what you're doing. And I want to give those guys to do it. So let's go back to your scenario. You were 0 for what?
35.
Okay. So I just heard the story the other day, and I got the chills when I heard the story. Right. So there's a hitter that came through here, an unbelievable player named Howie Kendrick.
Right.
In fact, he played in town here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then he went up through the Angels organization, and he spent a lot of time in the big leagues. He's an unbelievable hitter. In fact, I think at every level in the minor leagues, I think he won the batting title each year. I mean, we're talking one of the best of the best. Oh, yeah. So when he was in A-ball, in fact, I was talking to his manager this past week, and he told me the Howie Kendrick story, and I need to polish this, but we'll make a run at it. Howie ended up going 0 for 40.
Oh, wow.
0 for 40. And I'm like, how did he respond to that? And he's like, you blew my mind. So let me ask you. So you're 0 for 10 right now. Okay. Right. What are you saying to yourself?
Oh, dude, I hope I can get a hit next game. Like, I don't even, like,
right.
Yeah. Just you start counting. Oh, I'm 0 for 12, and right. Everyone knows,
Sure. Yeah. And let's take you into batting practice. So right. This is before the game. You're taking batting practice. You hit you're in there, you're trying to crush, you're trying to mash. You hit a weak ground ball to, the shortstop. What do you say to yourself?
Come on.
Okay. Let's go. Yeah. Then you hit that weak fly ball to the opposite field. What do you say to yourself?
Oh my hell.
Yeah. What's wrong with me? This and that and this and that. And, right. and that's what you would expect, especially someone who's 0 for 10 and then someone who's 0 for 20 and then someone who's 0 for 30.
Yeah.
You can imagine what it sounds like batting practice. So, and this is where my mind was blown. So Howie Kendrick's in there. He's like, he ended up being 0 for 40.
Wow.
But during batting practice, he hits this weak ground ball to the shortstop. And guess what he says to himself?
I'll beat it out.
Infield back, RBI for Howie. Right?
Right.
Then he hits his fly ball out to right field. And he's like, sack fly.
Yeah.
And he was continually talking positive to himself throughout this whole thing.
So was he like that, or was that?
He came that way.
Okay. He came that way.
That's my understanding.
Right.
And when I was around Howie in AAA and the big leagues with the Angels, that's the Howie I know.
That's probably why he was the best hitter on the planet.
Right. Probably. So that's something, but you learn a lesson from someone like that. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out there and just be like, la, 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 life is good. And no, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is we got to bring 74 down to 50 because life's hard.
Right.
Life will create 50% negativity and cause that no matter what.
Right.
But we got to manage the rest. So I talk about a 10-80-10 rule sometimes. 10% of the time when you're playing a sport, you are going to absolutely dominate because it's your day. You're in the zone.
Yeah.
10% of the time, you're so bad, it's just not your day. Okay, so in baseball, we say, you're so bad you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat, right? I mean, it's
right.
So there's the bookend 10s, but the 80% is what you need to manage. So you're 10% of your time in life, you're going to just have that day. It's just that day.
This is, and tell me what you think about this, is I played best when I was doing things out in the community and being a badass off the field. Like, I don't know how does that translate over into baseball? Because I really did, like when I was service and like getting involved with the host family, remember that guy out there, and or in the summer ball when we go off, when I was like just a good person and not being so selfish. And I guess that would tie into the brain, because then on the field, you talking to yourself better probably too. Like, I don't know, when I was playing my best, I was better when I was doing good things outside of baseball too.
I agree. And let me take a stab at it. Here's why. It all goes back to belief system.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, we talked about it. So your self-talk is going to lead to your self-image.
Right.
Your self-image is going to lead to your actions.
Right.
Your actions are going to lead to your results.
Right.
And what does your results lead to? Your self-talk.
Yeah.
And here we go.
Right.
Okay. So, and it all leads back to, so whether we call it self-image, we call it belief system, you call it confidence, to me, it's the same. So it's about the process and your routines and your habits. And I call them routines and habits of excellence. What does your routine look like?
Right.
When you struggle with confidence, and so let's go this route. Confidence. So I'm out there. I went back and visited a school known as a powerhouse in college baseball.
Right.
I go out there, they're struggling. I spend a little bit of time with them, and I'm talking to the coach. A gentleman I didn't know. We just met him that day, and I'm like, talk to me about your team. He's like, man, we're struggling. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, your record shows that you're struggling. They were like 9-30.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, this is so hard for me because I love my team. I mean, we're big, we're fast, we're strong.
Right.
He's like, but we just can't win. And I said, why? And he says, because we have no confidence. And he said, until we win, we will never have confidence. Okay. So this took me down a whole new path.
Right.
And I'm like, Coach, what happens if you don't win for the next 3 years?
Right.
Do those players that are coming through here, are they not going to be confident players? So I got asked this earlier today, actually. Right. I said, Zach, you come across as being a pretty confident person, right, a pretty confident player. I've known you for a while. Were you always this confident as a player? So really interesting question. And it made me think, well, where does confidence come from? Okay. So as a young player, I was confident. Why was I confident? Because I had success.
Right.
I mean, I could play. I was good.
Right.
And so I was confident as a result of that.
Right.
So where does confidence come from? Does it come from success? Yes or no?
I think it does come from success, but I think it comes from that grind in the beginning of the success. Don't you think? The shadows almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the piece that people are missing. So sometimes we feel like it's all about the result.
Right.
We live in a life of results. We live in the outcome all the time. Okay. Right. So in the addiction world, I always call it, it's like a light switch.
Right.
Okay. My goal is to be sober. Okay.
Right.
So when I'm sober, my light switch is on. If not, it's off. So
yeah,
it's off a lot.
Right.
In baseball, our goal was to make it to the big leagues. So guess what? My light switch was off most of my life, and that's hard. Right.
Right.
And so, but the question is does it come from winning? Absolutely. But what if you don't win?
Yeah.
Does that mean that your life is going to suck?
Right.
So we have to find ways to create confidence.
Right.
And you have the answer. You says it's the process.
Right.
It's your routine. So you got to go out and create confidence, because honestly, life doesn't owe you anything and you're not guaranteed success.
Right.
So you have to go out, and you use the word grind, right? With acronym, get ready. It's a new day. All right. So you have to go out and you have to get after it and create confidence for yourself. So when you can get someone to buy into that. So for you, you perform better when you're doing things in the community that make you like who you are, which gives you better self-talk, which is going to, at the end of the result, give you better actions, which is going to create better results.
Exactly.
Make sense?
I wish I would have linked that up, but because in addiction, when I first got sober, like I couldn't talk in front of people. Like I was so no confidence, and everyone, like Frank, Frank's recovering heroin addict.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, that when they first get sober, they're flipping on that light switch, and it's scary. 100%. Like the world is scary. They got to start, bills are coming. And so we talk a lot about in here about like the orchestrating stress. So like you're, in that gym, a big philosophy is like, dude, all right, we're going to go, you don't want to get uncomfortable, but we're going to go in there and get uncomfortable today. And you're making yourself do it. And then afterwards, the reward is that high, you feel amazing. And so then you like to do that. And you keep putting yourself in a stressful situation in that gym.
Right.
That type of training.
100%.
It's just some, and so then you do that over and over. And then now standing in front of people sharing my story, like I'm still scared, but I'm used to being scared a little from that workout or orchestrating stress. So now I just do it scared.
Right.
And then I did that scared a couple times, and I sounded horrible and was a little humiliated, but like now I'm not, I don't know, but what gave me a lot of confidence too is, when I started working on my character, the mental, everything you're talking about,
right.
The physical comes, that's great. Like I'll have people come into this gym and they want to get biceps and abs and stuff, which is cool. But like the brain is really where that comes in. Like how, going back to how are you acting out in the world? Yeah. Can you sit there and watch Finding Nemo with your 3-year-old and just be patient and stay present?
Sure.
And go change the diaper and I don't know, like that type of stuff for me, like in recovery, when I was first getting sober, it's like, cause I used to take pills watching my kids and now it's like, dude, just sit there and enjoy and sit inside the monotony of life and learn to deal with things. And naturally confidence will come because I'm just.
Yeah, it will. And one thing that's popping to my mind is create that.
You're right.
Build that into your 168 or your routine.
Right.
Okay. So I always tell individuals that are struggling, let's go create confidence by creating a dialed in routine.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, like when I was getting into the mental game, I'm like, and this is interesting. Let me say this real quick. Eric Gagne, one of the best pitchers of all time, best closers of all time. I'm sitting down with him and I'm like, man, what's the number one thing I need to be teaching these guys, these athletes, these professional baseball players? And he's like, you gotta have a routine. You gotta have a routine. You gotta be dialed into your routine. Then I bump into Cole Hamels, unbelievable left-handed pitcher, huge career. Cole, I don't want to take up too much of your time. What do I need to be teaching these guys? They have to have a routine. Yeah. And you brought that up first thing. You're like, are these guys just, adamant about their routine? They are. Right. And so why? So if you think about it, so I go to my mentor and I'm like, man, I love the mental game. I love what we're talking about. I don't have time to read books. I don't have time to listen to podcasts. I don't. And he's like, I understand, because, you're a busy man. He goes, let's break down your day. What does it look like? And I'm like, well, alarm goes off at 5:45 a.m. And he's like, okay, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I go to the gym. And he's like, what do you do before you go to the gym? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, what do you do? What is it? And I'm like, well, I go in and go to the bathroom. He's like, cool. And then you go to the gym? Yeah. Do you drive? Yes. How far away? 7 minutes. Okay. Then you go crush a workout. Awesome. Then what? Well, I drive home. Okay. Then you shower. Then you go to work. How far is work? 7 minutes. And I'm like, he goes, do you drive home from work? Yeah. And he's like, so you spend 28 minutes a day in the car. He's like, what are you doing in the car? And I'm like, I don't know. Listening to music. He's like, Automobile University. Yeah. Let's go. Let's get dialed in. What can you do during that time? And so I'm like, interesting. So he goes, let's do this. Let's implement this.
I read this guy's book. Who you're talking about?
Okay. Yeah.
What's his
name?
So
Brian Cain is my mentor and spent a ton of time with him. And he's been life-changing for me. So now check this out. So before, I didn't have time was my answer. And honestly, I felt like I didn't put in a lot of hours at work and then kids and this and that. So now it's like I wake up and I go to the bathroom, remember? Right. And so I'm going to teach real quick the habit cycle. Right. So you got results that you want. Right. Habit create the results. Right. But that's where we stop when we teach it. Right. Okay. So now we just hope we can create habits. Well, how do you create habits? Right. Well, we don't have that conversation. Right. And the one thing I throw in there before habit creation is trigger. You need to have a trigger. Right. Okay. So this is cool. This is cool. This is a trigger. So now when I get up and go to the bathroom, in the bathroom, I have a book. Okay. And whatever book you want it to be, but this one is a daily message about mental performance. Right. And so I go to the bathroom and I read one page in the morning when I'm at the bathroom about mental performance. First thing I do. Right. Okay. So what is my trigger? Going to the bathroom. Every single time I go into that bathroom, I'm going to read that page. Right. Then I go jump in the car and I drive to the gym, 7-minute drive. I hook up with a podcast. I got a 3.5 to 4 minute message from a mental performance coach back on the East Coast that I listen to every single day that I drive to the gym. So what's my trigger? The drive to the gym. Right. I go get my workout in and you guys, you and all your buddies push me hard enough in there. And then the ride home, that's my trigger to a different podcast. Right. So if you think about it, I'm getting like, I'm pushing 15, 20 minutes a day of mental performance training that I didn't have time for. It's all because of the routine and implementing the habit cycle, which is the most important thing that I've seen is the trigger. Right. Makes sense? Yeah. If you have a trigger, it'll happen. Right. We'll get it done. So add that to your routine in habit creation is that trigger. Yeah. I love that. Every time you walk by the kitchen, drink a big glass of water. Love it. That's that trigger for the hydration. Hydration. Yeah. Every time you walk past the kitchen, you got, perfect. So you walk through the door, Jane, you got the 5 pull-up bar. Boom. Yeah. So if you implement a trigger, you'll get it done. And then to go back to what we were saying though, what am I creating by doing this routine? So now I've read one page a day, and whatever it is I need to read. Then I'm driving, I'm listening to something uplifting, right? That's giving me some fuel for the day. And then I go get a workout in and then I listen to some more. By the time it's 6:15, 6:30, I've crushed my day. Yeah. And I've won my morning. Orchestrated stress. And orchestrated stress. About yourself. And there comes confidence because I created victory. Right. I created victory. I didn't just sit around and wait for it to come. Right. Because it might not. Right. I went out and got it. I went out and created it. And that's how you get through some of those days. You create it. Yeah. You become tougher. You get on that routine and then part of that habit cycle too, then becomes the reward. So then after a while of on that thing, like all of a sudden you have all these concepts running through your brain. So like, oh dude, I want to keep reading, and then confidence. Yeah. Like momentum.
I love that you brought that up. I love that you brought gaining confidence on a routine. We talk a lot about that because that's huge. Like for the substance abuser, like same, like getting up at the same time,
make your bed,
doing the same thing. I mean, it all sounds,
right.
Having your meals, we talk about hitting, we get up everybody on this nutrition plan where we try to get them eating every 3 hours, with a snack bag. So that they build that routine around their nutrition, a little bit of reading, maybe a nap. I push naps.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of these guys we feel like we need to be busy all the time. And now I need to take more caffeine because I got to be more I'm like, no, it's a healthier mindset to go take a 20-minute nap under a tree and talk to your higher power.
Love it.
Love it. Stuff like that. But I love that you said that because I really do believe that true confidence comes on. And that's where I was trying to get at. A lot of people, the gym gives me confidence, but real confidence comes through that process. of like hitting that day. And then, we do called a step 10. The step 10 in the big book. What is it again, Frank?
Take personal inventory.
Yeah. So you take a personal inventory. So like every night it'd be prayer.
Yep.
Right. For me, it's like I get down on my stairwell and I talk to God and I review the day. I say, God, have I hurt? Was I resentful? Was I mother effing anybody in my head? Pissed off feelings towards people. If so, I think, okay. And usually I'll send out a few texts to make sure I wasn't short or try to fix some things. Maybe I got to make a phone call.
Right.
Did I harm anybody? Usually not. Maybe I was mean to my wife or yelled at the kids or, it's usually charity that I offend nowadays, like where I'm like, just, in business and stuff. But we talk a lot about having that end of the day review of your day. It doesn't even have to be with your higher power. For me, it is. A lot of these guys, it's just sitting down and meditating and saying, dude, how did it go? Did I keep my spiritual condition high?
Yeah. And it's awesome. I love that because, I implement that with my athletes.
Right.
So here I have my guys in the big leagues and they're doing this after each game. Okay.
Yeah.
And here's how I attacked it. So I call it same thing. It's exactly the same. I call it honest self-evaluation.
Right.
And the important part of that obviously is honest.
Yeah.
Right. We got to be real. We got to be real with who we are and what we did that day. And is it okay that we messed up? Absolutely. Because we talked about that. That's where the answers are.
Right.
So here's how I do it with them. I break it down. I call it the well, better, how.
Right.
Okay. So, and I've actually created journals for my athletes and anyone who wants one. I call it but it's my well, better, how. They sit down. It just takes a minute, right? It takes 5-10 minutes, maybe. What did I do well today? And it's such a simple question and so hard for us to answer.
Right.
The next question is, what do I want to do better? We could talk for hours about that.
Right.
But we're programmed that we don't look at the things that we did well. And you have to. Right. You have to. Because, again, we're bringing 74% down. We got to bring it down. So what did I do well today? What do I want to do better? And how am I going to do it? Okay. Right. And then right next to this, and we'll talk about this in a sec, because I want to walk you through this, is what is my 1424? Any idea what a 1424 is? Okay. And we'll get to that in a minute in just one sec. So I'll come back to this in one sec. Okay. I'm gonna go this other direction. We'll swing back around because I love that you implement that because I do as well.
Yeah,
and
I've seen like we're on the same philosophy. Because like it's interesting how this we're talking about a athlete, we're talking about substance abuse and how it's like we're still trying to fix thinking and on both sides.
Totally.
And it's very similar.
Absolutely.
It's like the same thing, really. Like,
it is the same thing. And again, that's one thing that I love. You call yourself a coach.
Right.
And I've pushed hard to call myself a coach too, because again, we're going to try to empower you with things that you can do to help you win the day. Right. Or let's narrow our focus, because I know in recovery, sometimes win the day is too big.
Yeah.
We got to win the moment.
Right.
And we got to win one moment at a time.
Yeah.
And that's how you win.
Right.
Is by doing that. But so really interesting scenario. 2 years ago, I was with the Texas Rangers organization as their mental performance coach, and they had just had the Major League Baseball draft. Okay. Right. So the first 7 picks were down there. They signed them. We gave them signing bonuses anywhere from, I don't know, 300,000 to 5 million. These kids get taken care of for being the best.
Right.
Okay. So right before I went down there at this time, I had heard a talk at our church about good, better, best.
Right.
Okay. And you're going to love this.
Right.
Do you agree with the concept? You've heard the talk. You've listened to it before.
Right.
You probably teach this. If you're good, my job is to help you to become
better.
And if you're better, then I'm going to push you to
best,
to be the best. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So I go down there to these guys, right? And this is really interesting. And I'm like, man, congratulations. You know, you guys are you're the best out there. And you know, you got taken care of and you reached your goal and your dream of being a professional athlete. Now we just got to reframe and get you back up to the big leagues. And so I'm having this whole spill with them. Every time I say the word best, guess what happens?
What?
You are the best baseball player I've seen. And their eyes either go down or they go to the side.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why are you putting your head down when we just gave you a $5 million signing bonus? Why are you dropping your head? Finally, one of them says, because I'm not. I'm like, okay, but you know, I can sit here and I'll be like, but guess what? You just did this in college and in high school and this and that. He's like, I'm not. Look at all these guys in this room. I'm not the best. And I'm like, interesting. Then I say to him, what is your biggest fear about being a professional athlete? About being a professional, what was your biggest fear going into this? That I wasn't going to get it done. That I wasn't going to be good enough. Okay. And they said that I'm not going to be good enough. So I fly home and I'm scratching my head. And honestly, that really bothered me.
Right.
That our thinking has gone to this. And I'm teaching in a school class or a church class. And I'm like, I'm going to play with this. I'm going to see what happens here. Right. And so I go in there and there's, 15 kids in there, 16, 17-year-old kids. Right. And I'm like, man, I just want to commend you guys. You are some of the best kids I've ever been around. Eyes drop.
Right.
And I'm like, why did you drop your head when I said that? And finally someone is like, we're not the best. We're struggling.
Right.
We're having a tough time. And I'm like, what's your biggest fear about life? What's your biggest fear about getting married? What's your biggest fear about parenting? What's your biggest fear about going to college? That we're not going to be good enough. So in the good, better, best model, no, we're not the best. And I don't think I'm worried. I'm scared. I'm not going to be good enough. And so I take a step back and I'm like, all right, I'm going to come back to this. So I head home. I think about it for a minute. And one of the main things I teach my athletes is control what you can control.
Right.
Right. I know you guys teach this. Control what you can control. Right. And if they really buy into that, they free themselves from a lot of these things that they can't. So control what you can control. So I fly back down to Texas and I'm like, can you control if you're the best? Yes or no? Can you control if you're the best? Yes or no? Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Can you?
Right.
I mean, right. I'm asking you.
I control if I'm the best. Yes. I can. I can control if I'm the best in my mind.
You can control if you're the best version of you.
Yeah.
But I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. At a certain level, genetics might stop you from being the best athlete,
there you
best basketball player ever.
Right. So interesting conversation. Right. It's a fun one to have. So at the end of the day, can you control if you're the best? Well, there's probably always going to be somebody better. So can you control if you're going to be the best? No.
Right.
Can you control if you're good enough? This is even an even tougher question. Can you control if you're good enough? Yes or no?
I don't think so.
Because
someone might be better.
Well, yeah. And guess what? That completely depends on who's asking the question. Like I can be good enough for you, but I'm not for you.
Right.
I can be good enough for them, but not for them.
Right.
But here's what's crazy. We spend our whole life focused on, am I the best? Or am I good enough? And that's what our focus is. You think about all these kids in high school that are going through tough times and struggling. What are they struggling with? Am I good enough?
Right. Jeez.
Okay. But that's something you can't control. And so then I go, these guys, can you control this? And I'm like, no, you cannot. So then I'm like, okay, in the good, better, best model, if you can't control if you're the best and you can't control if you're good enough, there's one more in there, and that is better. And then I say to them, and I'm going to ask you guys, can you get a little bit better every single day? Yes or no?
Yes.
And you said that with authority.
Yeah.
Like you said, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's our focus.
Right.
Oh, so that's our focus. So let's swing back. Well, better, how? What'd you do well today? What do you want to do better? How are you going to do it? What is your 1424? 1424 is 1% of your day.
Right.
14 minutes and 24 seconds. And so I go to them. I said, is it worth it for you to invest 1% of your day into doing something that's going to make you better? Everybody says, yes, 14 minutes and 24 seconds. I'm like, that's all I asked for. Give me 1424. Give yourself 14-24.
That is dope.
And stick to it. And here's what's cool about it. So I'm going to take off from here when we get done and leave. I won't see you again. Let's say I don't see you for 6 months, and I bump into you at a football game. I'm like, Hawk, what is your 14-24? And if you can tell me what your 14-24 is, I know you're getting better every single day. So, and let me say this. Can I guarantee it?
Right.
Let's say that you want to work on your pull-up.
Right.
You can't do pull-ups.
Right.
Okay. But you want to, all right? 14-24. If you invested, and I use the word invest, it's important.
Right.
If you invest 14 minutes and 24 seconds every single day into doing pull-ups, 6 months from now, will you be better?
Yes.
Yes. Guaranteed. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed. Yes.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely. Can you apply that to any part of your life?
Right. Yes.
Your marriage?
Yeah.
Your relationship with a higher power?
Mm-hmm.
14 minutes and 24 seconds. Invest it, and in 6 months you'll be better.
Wow.
So I take a real quick story. I down at CrossFit down in St. George with the Boyer crew.
Right.
We love those guys, and there's a gentleman there that went through my program.
Right.
And I introduced the 14-24, and he got all excited. And then after I got done, I didn't see him for about 6 weeks.
Right.
And we finally connected at the gym again. And he's like, I've been looking for you. He's like, I wanted to see if your stuff really works. He's like, he competes in the senior CrossFit games.
Right.
And he's like, I always get crushed in the event where I have to do pull-ups because I can't do butterflies.
Right.
He's like, I can do pull-ups, but I can't butterfly. And he's like, so I wanted to see if it worked. He goes, so I tried 14-24 when it comes to butterfly pull-ups. And I had, I pulled up on the website, the progression of the butterfly pull-up, and I worked on it every single day for 14 minutes and 24 seconds. He said, your program did not work for 26 days. But on day 27, and he jumps up on the bar and he's rocking out some butterfly pull-ups. Right. He did it. 14 minutes. Crushed it.
Yeah.
He crushed it. And I think that it's going to help anyone with whatever it is you want to work on.
I like that. 14 minutes, 14-24. Yeah. I mean, imagine these guys that are just coming off the, I want to go over to addiction just
totally 100%
the stuff you're talking about. But like, imagine, we're talking about people that struggle with motivation.
100%.
They can't see any hope, and it was even like that with me. That's why like the gospel was so big for me. That's because the gospel gave me hope. Yeah. Like a hope of like, dude, I felt when I first got into the gospel, it was like, this could work. Like this might like help me change my life, And then as I started participating in a little bit, some hope came into my heart. Yeah. And that hope fed me to be more motivated. So like these people that we're working with, their lives are in shambles, and they don't have hope. They don't have they can't see any positivity, but it's like, and to get them to put 14 minutes onto something a day could be really hard.
Totally.
So it's crazy, but if you can, and they start putting pressure on something like this every day, it just something little, it goes so far, Yeah.
Think about this though, because I agree with you, and I see that because I'm dealing with some of this in my home and in my life, and motivation is something that we've always talked about, right? We've always talked about it, and how do you get it? But here's one thing I want you to remember it, and if this will help you, write it down and put it on your mirror, on your fridge, whatever. Little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Right.
And I know that you guys know what I'm saying, and you agree with it.
Right.
So if you can't do 14-24, start out with 2.
Right.
And here's one big thing that I try to talk about, and this hits hard, it hits home here. I don't care where you're at. Right now. And I think one of the reasons why we struggle with motivation is because, again, we talk about the light switch. We have this image of who we want to be. And if we're not that person today, the light switch is off and we're disappointed in ourselves.
Right.
Okay. That's not how you're going to do this. I don't think.
No.
How are you going to do this? A little at a time.
Right.
Okay, so if you can put that book next to your toilet and that's all you do tomorrow, huge victory.
Yeah.
Huge win. And that's where you start.
Right.
But what I think you're going to find out is you're going to start liking that feeling. Okay. So, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't research this a lot. We're chasing dopamine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what we want. That's why SOAR is so successful, is because you're creating dopamine downstairs with the iron. And in other ways. We just have to understand that dopamine comes in many forms and fashions. We have to understand what we need at that moment, what level of dopamine we need, and then you have to go get it. Wow, okay. So awesome. There's many, many ways to go get your dopamine. One of the greatest ways to do it is by having this routine. You know, you're going to manage your levels of dopamine by having a dialed in routine day in and day out. It's just your job now to go implement that routine. Okay. And I agree with you. The back end of your day, let's do that evaluation. Well, better how? What is your 14-24? So here's what it looks like. So you just got done playing a baseball game. Okay. You played pretty well. So what did you do well in the game?
I had a couple doubles.
Yeah.
You know, stole third.
Perfect.
Happy.
Perfect. What do you want to do better? You probably got picked off by the left-handed pitcher. Okay. So what do you want to do better? I want to be a better base runner. All right. I don't want to get picked off first.
How did you know I got picked off?
I mean, it just happened a lot. Okay. So how are you going to do it? Okay. Well, tomorrow I'm going to go grab one of my left-handed pitchers, and for 8 minutes, he's going to show me his move. And then I still have 6-14 where I'm going to work on some hip mobility or whatever it may be. And I'm going to fill up my 14-24. And here's where this gets so cool is you had a weakness. You had a failure in the game. You got picked off. And because of that failure, you get to go get after it tomorrow, and you get to feel your thing. And you get to actually, and when you start attacking weaknesses that are exposed, guess what happens? You create confidence. Boom. It's a formula to help you get going. And then, you know, last thing, side note, on the bottom of my little well, better, how, I have a list of things that you can control, and I have them grade themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. How was your attitude today? How was your effort today? How was your energy today? How was your self-talk? How was your body language? These things can be controlled, and grade yourself based on that, you know, and boom, this is something you can refer back to. How did I do that day? You know, and my guys are doing that, you know. My pitcher up in the big leagues this year that turned his, you know, he dominated at the end of the year. He was relentlessly evaluating his games based on this, and man, he took off. Fun stuff.
That's incredible. So I love what you said about dopamine, because so in this program where it's like a student to coach model, right? So really, because you still want to get high, like everybody. So you coach, and like when you coach and you work with those guys, you feel amazing, I bet, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you see them, you know, catch on. Like, tell me you're not high as a coach.
100%.
And then you're like, so it's the same thing here. I could take a person that struggled with heroin, and they turn it around and they get this, put together this routine, and then they start working with others, and they help someone else to turn from a negative to positive. And then that's just feeding their soul with just happiness. And there's no greater high.
No.
There's no great, and that's really the model. It's really the model in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel,
right?
But it's that service is the antidote to stress. You know,
totally.
Have you seen the Peanut Butter Falcon?
No.
Oh
no. I need to jump all over that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
I'm on it.
It's unreal. Like, well, so I'll just tell you what it's about. But like, it's about a little handicapped kid. He's got Down syndrome. He's 20.
Okay.
And the state had put him in like an old folks home, right? They didn't know what to do with him. His family abandoned him. Well, he breaks out of this old folks home, and he ends up running into this. It's down in the South, but he runs into Shia LaBeouf, who's the actor. You know who that is?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and Shia LaBeouf's character is really unhappy. His brother had died, and he's miserable, and he's ornery, but he ends up connecting with this handicapped kid. And at the first, when he starts working with him, he doesn't want to deal with him. He's mean to him. Totally. He's like, when can I get rid of you? You know? And he's stressed out. He's got these guys chasing him, but all of a sudden he decides something switches in his brain, and he decides he's going to just like serve this handicapped kid. And like, he just like the handicapped kid wants to go meet this certain wrestler. Mm-hmm. So his Shia LaBeouf's character decides he's just going to like help the kid accomplish his dreams.
Right.
and he becomes happy. Like he doesn't thinking about himself at all anymore. He's got all these he's got stress, but all of a sudden he's this happy cat, you know, and he's high, you know, he's got that dopamine you're talking about. Like that's what we're doing here. Like if we can get people to build that routine, like you're talking about, change their habits. And then all of a sudden now they're serving and leading other people to change. Oh my hell. Yeah. You watch people brighten up, and now they're accountable to someone. They're like, man, I really want to stay sober. I mean, how do you think me and Frank are? That's really how I started this. Yeah. You know, it was like, I was like, I mean, I was a hospital administrator and I got sober up there and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? It's like, I can't stay sober here. And
well, I think you're right on. And I think giving of yourself is the easiest way to help yourself get over your struggles. There's no doubt about that. And I do. I know you know this, but I love your concept and the way you go about it. And there's so much to it. And again, I know I'm hitting this really hard, but it's because you're coaches. Yeah. And it's because you're giving people something to do. So, you know, one thing that came to me is you were talking about this high you get when you are helping other people overcome their struggles in life. And that's where you get your high. But it's important. And I know you do this, but what are you going to do when they lose? Okay. So here I have this pitcher I'm working with up in the big leagues, and he goes up there and this really happened this year. He goes up there and he wins like 4 or 5 in a row after losing, you know, I don't know, 8 or something like that. And so he flips and turns it. And then I go watch him and he gets beat. Yeah. And honestly, and I know that you have this feeling when you see individuals come through your program, they are your brothers, they are your sons, they are your daughters, they are your sisters. I mean, they're part of you. Right. And when they lose, or they struggle, relapse, it hurts. Right. So the question is how are you going to respond, or how are we going to help them respond when they lose? Yeah. What are you going to go to? Wow. And that's one thing I've tried to really give my athletes is I want to give you something to go to when you need something to go to. Right. And if you can answer that question for everybody, if you can give them something to go to when they need something to go to, man, you are coaching them, and more than coaching them, you got your arm around them in those times. Yeah. And so that's the challenge I put on myself. Same one I put to you. And I know you're answering that question for your, you know, your clients to come through here and your brothers and sisters that come through here. Right. You're giving them something to go to when you need something to go to. And I have stuck with that and held on to that. And I'm like, quick example, you know, so you got a pitcher who goes out there, inning 1, dominates. Inning 2, no hits. Gets out in the 4th, and all of a sudden he walks the first guy in 4 pitches. Right. And then the next guy hits a double. Right. What is he going to do? Right. And honestly, oftentimes, you know, he just hopes that he can get the next guy out. Right. And when you're playing in the big leagues or you're dealing with addiction, that might not be enough. Right. So you want to give them something to go to. When you get these feelings that you need, here's the routine. Here's what I want you to do. Try this. And honestly, it has to be them that come up with what it is. Right. But that's what I do with my guys. And honestly, I had one of my athletes this year. I talk about signal lights. Okay. Right. When I talk about dealing with emotions, I relate them to a signal light. When you pull up to a stoplight, it's either a green light, yellow light, or red light. Green light's like being in the zone. Right. You're dialed in. Nothing affects you. Your mind's there's nothing going on. You're just boom. Right. Yellow lights, you start having this negative self-talk. Right. You start wondering. Red lights like, get me out of here. Right. Right. So, you know, and I implement this program with them, and we figure out how we're going to get back from red light back to green. And so I teach this, and I have an athlete working on it. He makes a comment to me, and he's like, I hoped that I went out in my start today and got to red lights. He was hoping that he struggled, because for the first time in my life, I have a plan in place on how I'm going to get back to green. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. You know, if you can armor yourself with tools that can help you get through a tough time, you got a better chance. And that's what coaching is, right? That's what this is. And again, like you said, that's where we get this high. Yeah. Is by seeing someone go to a tough time and pulling through. Right. Or seeing someone fail and learn from that failure. Right. Because that's what it's all about. Yeah. So going over to addiction, it's the tools of, you know, cravings. I always thought that if I could teach people to beat a craving, like compete. So, you know, you
you see, like with opiates or any drug, addicts go to great lengths. I mean, you've probably seen on TV, people rob pharmacy. They're going with gunpoint. I had a guy that I went to high school with, normal guy, cool. I saw on the TV, this was years ago. I saw on the TV that he robbed a pharmacy.
Wow.
And I thought, what in the hell? But then after my addiction, and I know why he robbed a pharmacy.
100%, right?
Like, I get it.
It makes sense.
And so those cravings that come into the mind with addiction is like, okay, well, what are you going to do when it's gone too far? When that thought's gone too far and you're sitting there and you've been doing good. And what's the plan? You know, it's the same thing. Like,
yeah, totally.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, so my thing is obviously one of is pick up the phone.
Accountability partner.
Call someone, let them know that you're thinking, tell on yourself, call, you know, but another one is go compete with it. I had a time when things were going good with me and my wife. And I was thinking about, like, I had like 6 weeks sober, and it doesn't seem like a long time, but it was a long time back. Sure. And relapse meant probably divorce in my marriage. You know what I'm saying? And I woke up in the morning and I started to get a craving. I've had back surgeries, and I'd blow it out of proportion. And I started thinking like, and I knew that I was going to start thinking about going to pick up, because my routine before was that once I'd get the craving, I would fake sick and just like lay around, have self-pity all day and watch Netflix. And that's how I tried to get the craving to go away.
Gotcha. And
it never worked. I'd always go manipulate a doctor, go to the pharmacy, pick up the pills, and I would relapse. That was the cycle, you know, the habit loop.
Right. Yep.
This one time I decided, I was like, dude, I'm just going to go for, I had gone far. I started doing the Netflix thing. If I go pick up, it means divorce. I know it, but I'm thinking about it going and picking up. So I decided, this is in my mind. I said, I'm going to go for a jog. And I didn't want to go for a jog. So I go for a jog and I listen to music. I'm talking to God. I'm working on gratitude, thinking about my kids. 3 laps, sprinted out back to my car, and I'm pacing back in my car. And I always say to people when I tell the story, I'm like, what was my mindset now? You know, it was, my mindset had changed so dramatically that I said to myself, what the hell were you going to do? You were going to go pick up pills?
Right.
You were going to ruin, like, and I went home, I was tickling my kids and throwing them on the couch. And my wife's like, are you high? I'm like, dude, I went for a jog.
Well, what was your answer to that? Were you high?
I was high.
Right.
But it was, that's what I'm trying to teach people. But but the thing, going back to the trigger.
Right.
In the reward system is like, I didn't want to go for that job. No. You know what I'm saying? Totally. Like, I was pissed, but I made myself do it. I orchestrated that stress and I captured the rewards of confidence. I saw the scenery. I heard that Taylor Swift song. I'm talking to God, and whatever happened, I caught a different reward on that day. Then I responded differently than the self-pity, lay there on the couch and mope around and then go pick up pills.
Right.
But like, so the routine, it's the same in baseball. I don't know. Like, it's incredible. Like, it's any routine you have to create. Like, there's a reward to anything that we do. So to create a habit, you have to create the reward too, of like, but then you have to do what you said, create a trigger so that you start on that loop until you notice the reward and say, oh shit, I want to keep doing this. I want to go for a jog right now. I feel like going and picking up pills.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
No, I love that. And I was hoping you'd tell that story. I know you have before. It's one that hit me hard.
Right.
And it's one that I've told.
Right.
You know, so thank you for sharing that. You created a contract with yourself.
Right.
You did. And you know, when you can create a contract with yourself and say, you know, hey, just go do this if you still want to, you know, there it is.
Right.
But you challenge yourself to do it, but you had something to go to.
Right.
And I think that's so powerful, other than just hoping you get through that tough time.
Yeah.
Let me try this first, because this is my routine.
Right.
When this hits, boom, it can help you. It can get you there.
And to get new highs. And so the hope is, like, for me, like, if we can teach people how to do that and create those rewards, then it's like they know what to do, and they're already on this day I go for a jog, I'm training at a gym, I'm going to meetings, they've built the routine that you've talked about to where then their life's on a foundation of health, like the gospel talks about, my favorite scriptures, I think like Helaman 5, where it talks about building your life on the foundation of Christ, kind of similar. But because I've noticed that ever since I have built my life on the foundation of Christ and tried that I can manage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not afraid. I know I'm getting into this. I always end up going into the gospel,
Well, it's your foundation and it's helped you and it's pulled you through. Right. So, and it's created some of your bigger whys. And so as I look at the story you just told, there's some huge components that you pull out of there. Why was that day different than another day? Well, you recognized your why.
Right.
Okay. Your why, and your why was so big at that time because you said that if you would have picked up that day, it might have cost you your family.
Right.
All of a sudden your why got really big. And I'm a firm believer that if, motivation, it's such a weird thing, but if your why is bigger, if you have a big enough why, you'll do it.
Right.
And if you're not doing it, then you need to find a bigger why.
Yeah.
And if you can tap into that, that's going to pull you through a tough day.
Right.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have tough days. I didn't say that.
Right.
I said, but you need to have something to tap into. So one of my favorite books, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. He talks about the cookie jar.
Right.
And when he really struggles, he's got this cookie jar where he's got old victories. He's got his why, all this stuff sitting in there. And he goes to the cookie jar, pulls out something and reads that. And they're all of his whys. Okay. Right. All of these things, it's something to go to when you need something to go to. Okay. Right. Just imagine having a cookie jar. And when you feel like you need to go pick up or you need to go get it or whatever you want to do, you go to the cookie jar first, man. Right. And then you read this about, hey, back when I was this, here's what I did and I can overcome and whatever it might be. Or maybe it just says wife.
Right.
I'll tell you what, if I'm getting ready to do something and I pull out something out of a jar and it says wife on there, that'll bring me to my knees and tears down my face. Yeah. And I think that might help me.
Yeah.
Think about that. Cookie jar. I loved it. He taught me something huge right there. And I think it can be implemented.
Yeah. Like we say, so everything you say is like, well, keeping something in your front pocket, like the same idea.
Yeah.
Like, that story right there's one I always keep in my front pocket. Another one is like, I don't want to go on pause again. The light switch. I love what you're saying. Cause basically when you're saying you turn off the light switch, you're hitting the pause button. Mm-hmm. I go back on opiates and boop, I'm just sitting here and I don't, and I
stagnant.
I enjoy trying to make progress as a human being. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And opiates and pills and alcohol for me anymore. Like if I go back into a relationship with any of that stuff, like I just go on pause.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes back to the confidence thing. Anyone, it's the same thing in baseball. Like, substance abuse in baseball. I think, I have some regrets from stuff that I felt like I could have been a better player.
Yeah.
And I know, everyone's different, but I feel like any baseball players too, if they're going out and partying like that, it might be in their best interest if they're having troubles in the game, to take a look at that and say, I might be partying too much. A lot of people don't want to say that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And
sure. Yeah, I totally see that. And it does happen. And again, it comes back to being a true self-evaluator.
Right.
But something jumped up and it's a little different topic, but it jumped up in my mind. I think we got to hit that. You talked about having regrets.
Right.
And I've seen that a lot.
Right.
And it's an interesting concept about having regrets, but I'm going to change perspective a little bit because I'm really big in changing perspective.
Right.
We got to look at it differently. So you have regrets, sure.
Right.
Because maybe I could have.
Right.
Or maybe I should have. And we all have them about different things in our past.
Right.
But you need to also give your back off a little bit on yourself.
Right.
And realize that time in your life, those struggles that you created, or that you went through, or that you were blessed, to go through, have made you who you are.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, are they regrets? Sure. But you wouldn't be who you are today if you didn't do that.
Right.
And you have to remember that. Another thing that I was thinking about is this too. So, I have a situation at home where we have some struggle.
Right.
And as I talk with my son about his situation and his scenarios and some of the, disorders and this that he's dealt with and his battles every single day, my perspective has changed. And you know what? His struggles aren't just his struggles.
Right.
He was blessed with that struggle because I needed to go through it.
Yeah.
Okay. So your struggle might not just be yours.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you went through, Hawk, that wasn't just for you. So quit being so selfish and thinking that was just for you.
Right.
You went through that struggle so you can help everybody here today.
Wow.
Okay. And you need to realize that and remember that. Okay. That you are impacting other people because of the struggle you went through.
Right.
And so you need to quit beating yourself up. And you need to quit looking back and being like, man, I messed up. I was terrible. So what you do is you go through your struggle, you gather as much information from that.
Right.
Okay. Gather as much information from that terrible day and use that to make you better.
Right.
And it's not just making you better. It's impacting everybody around you.
I love that, man. Yeah. The whole, like our conversation before we got on just about the struggles you're going through with that. Yeah, it's making you a better parent.
Right.
The thing that I love about addiction and having to deal with it and seeing people go through, because no family is going to be able to escape not knowing somebody in their life that's dealing with addiction, but like, is the empathy, how you talked about, when you talk to them about, what does it look like in your brain? I say that a lot. Why does it look like in your brain? Why are you going to pick up? Tell me exactly like why do you do it? And a lot of people, it's to escape stress and anxiety or depression,
right?
Some underlying issues. Majority of the time for me, when I took pills, I was always like little socially, especially like at Wichita State, when I first went out there, like when I found out about pills, it put me in life. I'm like, oh dude, I can talk to everybody right now.
Right.
And so, you're looking at your son. It's like the same thing. Like, dude, what if that's the case? Like, is weed or taking a pill, like, yeah, it's not good for him or her or whoever it is. But what if they're dealing with that in their brain? They're not just taking it to hang out.
Right.
They might be taking it because they're feeling pain or trauma. I mean, dude, some people have experienced heavy doses of trauma in their life, and so I get upset. A lot of people would say, well, you shouldn't just take this. I'll never forget it. I was down at Temple Square. This homeless lady, when I was first getting sober, I'd go down there and was talking to like the sister missionaries, kind of how I got into the church. And there's this lady, lady was walking across, and there's this whole old homeless lady, like 50s. And this lady goes up to her and says, some lady that was going into Temple Square, older lady, she says, you need to go get a job. She said it to the homeless lady. And I sat there and I listened to it for a minute, and I thought, you can't say that, because you don't know if that girl right there has been raped, and you don't know the trauma that has happened. Why is she homeless?
Right.
She can't go get a job,
right.
And that's a whole nother discussion. But I think what addictions taught me, and I guess what it can teach you as a parent is that, like, what the empathy,
right?
The trauma that maybe exists, in people's lives, and why they take a substance. It's not always just because I want to be a dumbass and have fun,
right? And again, I say this all the time, that the lessons I've learned by dabbling in, with some addiction, with some struggle, have been amazing to me,
right?
And I appreciate going through that experience. It's hard.
Yeah.
There's tough days and it's no fun, but I appreciate it because I've learned a lot. And one thing I learned is this. I'm thinking about it, and we'll talk about this in comparison with sport as well as addiction, but because I've seen it in my life,
right?
And then I've seen it in sport. So what we're all chasing is results,
right?
We want results, okay? So, and it's so funny. They're such a big deal, especially in sport. Like, I have this picture that I love. I was playing at a game in Yankee Stadium,
right? Wow.
And the picture's from my father-in-law took the picture, and I love it because it's from a stands, in the stands perspective of a fan. And the picture's out here, and you see Mike Messina on the mound, and you see Jeter over here, and you got Soriano's out there at second base, and then the scoreboard's in the background, and it's got, Zach Sorensen and that. Now, and I love it, but here's what's really funny. I have cropped that photo.
Right.
Because on the left side of the photo, it had my batting average.
Right.
Which was not good.
Right.
And so I love the photo. I hate the batting average, so I just crop it. Right.
Yeah,
so it was such a big deal now as I'm teaching this that we just are chasing results all the time.
Right.
Okay. So what happens as an athlete when you don't get the results that you want?
Right.
Okay. So, and think about this. So as a dad or as a coach or as a mom, and your son or daughter is not getting the results, how do you help them with that situation? Right. Okay. So, and I kind of have a pyramid right here. At the top of the pyramid, the very first thing we do is we try to motivate them, encourage them, put our arm around them. You got this, When that doesn't work, we still stay in this motivation phase, but we do it by shaming them.
Right.
What is your problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Why can't you, or why aren't you?
Right.
But we still have good intentions, but we're just trying to get the most out of them. Yeah. Okay. So, but think about that. Now, the next level down, when they start struggling and we can't get results by motivation, then we shift down one level and we start changing their mechanics.
Right.
So I'm going to change their swing. You talked about that earlier. I'm going to tweak the swing a little bit. And does that work? Absolutely. Are there great hitting coaches out there? 100%. I love them.
Right.
When that doesn't work, we go down to the next level. We start talking about maybe their focus isn't there. Okay. So we need to change your focus. So if it's a high school kid, we make them break up with their girlfriend because they need to focus on the game. Right. So we start talking about focus, and then maybe we talk strategy, but we're keep going down this ladder or this pyramid.
Right.
At the bottom of the pyramid is belief system.
Right.
Does this kid think he can do it?
Right.
Does he think he can't do it?
Right.
But we don't ever go there. We start at the top. We start trying motivation. We start trying change and swing. We start chalking focus. At the bottom is this, does he think he can do it?
Wow.
Well, we got to start at the bottom because I'll be honest with you. If he doesn't think he can do it, it doesn't matter how many times you change his swing. When he gets in that box, and he's like, there's no chance I'm getting a hit. Guess what? There's no chance he's getting a hit.
Right.
So let's take that over to struggle, and you can help me maybe with addiction. So in the world of therapy, okay, and I love therapy. I take part in it. It's very important. At the top of the pyramid, when you have a child who's struggling, we do what's called behavior modification.
Right. Right.
We want to change their behaviors. Okay. So how do we do it? Well, the first thing we do is we try to motivate them by putting our arm around them.
Right.
And saying, you got this.
Right.
When that doesn't work, what do? We shame them.
Right.
What is your problem?
Right.
Why are you doing this? Don't you see what you're doing to yourself and to your life? So it's this shaming scenario. Next level down, when that doesn't work, we actually go to therapy. We send them to therapy, and I'm a big believer in it.
Right.
Okay, but we go to therapy. When therapy's working a little bit, but not quite enough, then we start talking about maybe medication. Okay, and you can fill in the blanks here, but as we go down, at the bottom of the pyramid again is what? Does the kid like who he is?
Yeah.
So we're attacking a lot of this upside down.
Right.
I think.
Right.
How can we build up this self-image?
Right.
And again, I'm going to give you props again here, but that's what SOAR does.
Right.
Okay, we're going to build you from the foundation. Yeah. And you talk about foundation when you talk about, moving weight and going overhead. Absolutely. But it's the same with your mind.
Right. We
need to build their mind from the bottom up and get them to gain momentum in their belief and in their confidence and all this and that. And it's just unbelievable. If they believe in themselves, they can do it.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
Yeah, man, it's this has been probably the coolest conversation because it's been just a parallel. Like I see your philosophy and it's like the same, but how it pertains to addiction recovery or just life, That's why I'm thankful. Like it's for anybody, mental performance. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's just like the athlete. I mean, so many people just need help mentally.
Right.
Like that's all life is.
It's 90%, right?
90%, like whether it's baseball or anything.
That's right.
It's like, how are you doing in your head?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come. You know, we've talked about this a long time, and we knew it would cross paths, and it would parallel. We did, and
we need to do it again. We need to do. I need to have you come, at some point next time you're down here. Come talk to our group.
Awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Like have you come out and maybe even maybe I'll even put together something where I have like these kids programs come, and we'll get a big group over here.
Love it.
And have you come speak, because I think you could help a lot of people in this world. You know what I mean? I don't know if that interests you.
Oh, 100%. You know,
but it's the same thing. I mean, you heard me and you've heard, it's just a little different. It's similar to how I work with kids compared to adults. You just pitch it a little different.
Yeah. And to be honest and to be transparent and real, when I decided psychology, I wanted to go trauma psychology. I did, because, we've dealt with some trauma in our home.
Right.
With my son, and I want to do everything I could to help him. You know this. I've talked to you about it a lot. And as I started trauma psychology school, I'm like, sports would be fun.
Yeah.
And I went that path. And what I realize is yes, it's the same thing. I just have a little more, since it's sports minded. You know, honestly, I get some more perk of the ears. People think it's cool,
right?
But it's the same concepts.
Yeah.
And it does translate. And I do believe that we can.
Right.
Start making progress. And again, my challenge to you is a little bit at a time.
Right.
Recognize that you are a work in progress.
Right.
And your goal is to work in progress.
Right.
You're going to live right there in progress.
Right.
Okay. Just live and don't worry about getting to the end result. Don't worry about the end result. Live in progress.
Stay present. Be there.
Be where your feet are.
Yeah.
Be where your feet are, and just go for it. So that's it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. This has been great.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening, everybody. That was sweet. How